So,
But that is a key point in the Constitution, and obviously you are aware of this. Why would you not ask the President to delegate his authorities on a permanent basis to the Speaker of the House?
I said I cannot delve in detail in the constitutional and legal issues. We examined and consulted the matter and consulted with the legal experts, and they have their own detailed reservations, which I cannot speak about at the moment. But I laid the message and the terms clear to the Prime Minister during the meeting.
How many of the other opposition parties are on board with you as far as this proposal is concerned?
Dr. Abulghar and myself, and the significance of the meeting is to convey the message, the two key terms or conditions, which, if realized or if materialized, we can start negotiate on resolving the crisis, and we see the possibility of ending demonstrations.
But you're saying it was just two opposition figures then in meetings with the government. Are you representative enough of what the demonstrators want?
We came under the mandate of the National Association of Change with all its members and affiliations, which is also representative of many youth and other political parties as well.
Mohammed al-Baradei has said that he has been tapped by the Muslim Brotherhood to engage in a dialogue with the military. Now it seems that you've decided to engage in a dialogue with the government. Aren't these two positions contradictory? Can you do both, and can you live up to the demands of the people on the streets, the tens of thousands of people who are still protesting in Tahrir Square?
There is no contradiction between speaking to the army or speaking with the government. The government is led by a military who has his stature and heavy weight in the army. It is also representative of all, or if not the majority of the people demonstrating in the square. We do not claim that it represents all the demonstrators' views. However, we believe that there is no contradiction, and we did not propose a complete deal. We wished to commence through negotiations which lead to a resolution to this crisis.
Are you now, though, saying that you are willing to drop the key demands of the protesters and some key members of the opposition, including the Muslim Brotherhood, and that is that President Mubarak needs to step down before any kind of real negotiation can take place?
Yes, absolutely. Mubarak must disappear from the political arena in Egypt. We cannot negotiate while he is a president holding the reins of power. It is impossible.
Did you get any indication that that will happen?
The Prime Minister has shown a great deal of flexibility and also answered our demand for acknowledgement of the 25th of January. But the second demand, he was very, very hesitant.
But the Prime Minister has said in just the last several hours in an interview he gave to one of the Arabic TV stations that President Mubarak is unlikely to delegate his authorities to anyone, and that he is needed in the next 9 months or so for legislative reasons. Is that what your meetings have also focused on, and is that something you now accept, that President Mubarak needs to be part of this transition?
He attempted to provide justifications in the meeting, which justifications were not convincing to us. We firmly believe that the presence of the president is the key obstacle. The entire world is calling on him to step down, and he is not stepping down. He would like to burn the entire city and leave the entire country burned down. We cannot allow him to burn our country. We will defend our rights in this country, and we will be able to win our freedom. We have paid a dear cost, and we lost blood. The Egyptian people have paid the cost of freedom, and now it's time to restore freedom.
Thank you very much for joining us. on the line from Cairo, member of the National Association for Change. And as you've been hearing, the leadership of Egypt's ruling National Democratic Party, the NDP, has reportedly resigned. So who's taking over the top NDP positions now? Egyptian state television is saying the new Secretary General will be Hussam Badrawi. He is described as a respected member of the party. He's being portrayed by some as a liberal and a reformer. That harks back to his time as a former member of parliament when he was in charge of education reform. He's also said to be a qualified doctor and a professor at Cairo University Medical School. And only yesterday, that's Friday, he told a member of the Al Jazeera team in Cairo that he believes anti-Mubarak demonstrations have been given enough and that they should end their protests. He added that Mubarak could not step down as the country's president as it would violate the constitution. Omar Ashur is a lecturer in the politics of the modern Arab world at the University of Exeter. He's been with us over the last several minutes. What's your impression of what you've just heard being said from one member of the opposition as far as the meetings have gone with the government?
Yes, I guess we'll see the response of the government, and then we'll gauge from that, because it can be very simple. President Mubarak can delegate his powers to Omar Suleiman, and there is an Article 136 in the Constitution that he can revoke this in a matter of days. What kind of guarantees that he will give for the demonstrators and for the protesters? Because we don't want to see, or the overwhelming majority of the demonstrators in Egypt don't want to see a power from one military man to the other and then back again to Mubarak. So I guess, and then there's also the acceptability among the protesters, whether they're going to accept this or not. That's another question. I think the key issue is to keep the pressure ongoing, because the concessions are coming one by one in a minor way. They will try to, initially they try to break this revolution by force. And then after that, now they're giving minor concessions, more or less cosmetic ones, sacrificing the interior minister, sacrificing the three of his deputies, now removing Safwat al-Sharif from the Secretary General of the NDP, and then Mubarak resigning. When you look at it, nobody demand this. Nobody demand a vice president. Nobody demand Mubarak to sacrifice from the NDP. Everybody knows the NDP is there because Mubarak is there, and the only support for the NDP is the Central Security Forces and the State Security Investigations. These are like the two units that protect the NDP. But what else? Nothing else.
In order to avoid, though, a repeat scenario of what happened in Tunisia, when an article of the Constitution was first talked about, which would only have given the powers of the president to the vice president on a temporary basis, why wouldn't Article 84 of the Constitution be revoked in this case? And it says, I quote from it, that in case of the vacancy of the presidential office or the permanent disability of the President of the Republic, I underline permanent, the Speaker of the People's Assembly shall temporarily assume the presidency. It then goes on to say that the President of the Republic shall be chosen within a maximum period of 60 days from the date of the vacancy of the presidential office. Wouldn't that put to rest any kind of doubts as to whether or not this is a definitive departure, if that were to be the case and the scenario that's most likely to be followed?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, it will be more acceptable. One, because it's constitutional. Two, because he's a civilian. And three, Ahmed Fathi Sour is not a leader in any way. No, he has no followers. He's basically a weak character. And what will happen at that point is you would have a transitional unity government formed from all the political colors of the Egyptian scene. That will set the scene, or otherwise a government of experts that just will set the scene, not politicians, just experts on economic matters, on political matters, on constitutional legal matters, to just set the scene for a free and fair democratic elections in 60 days or in 90 days to basically build the democratic institutions in Egypt. But putting a former head of the military intelligence, another military man who is quite engaged in this protest by various cunning ways, repressive manners, it will be, I think, quite dangerous situation. If you looked at the history of Omar Suleiman, for example, it's quite uncompromising. Every negotiations he dealt with, it was a failure, whether between Fatah and Hamas trying to reconcile them, or between the northern Sudanese and the southern Sudanese, also was a failure. And so it's not a compromising figure that will give concession and will create a democratic system in any way.
Let me just ask you this very quickly. Besides Omar Suleiman's closeness to the regime and to President Mubarak and his background as head of intelligence, how much